In this video, I'm going to be looking at 8 reasons why you probably struggle with music theory on your guitar and what you can do about it. That's coming up next. Whether you believe it or not, learning about music theory on your guitar can be incredibly useful. It can help you to understand the music that you're playing, give you ideas or direction when it comes to creating music of your own, and it'll help you to better communicate your thoughts and ideas with other musicians.
Your music sucks and you're an asshole.
But chances are, as a guitar player, you've likely struggled to come to grips with music theory at one point or another.
What? What does that mean?
So today I'm going to be going through the 8 most likely reasons why you've struggled with music theory, and I'm going to give you solutions that you can use to overcome them. Now, each of these particular issues are things that I've personally struggled with myself over the course of learning to play the guitar and learning more about music theory. And they're also things that I've noticed that my students have struggled with as well. The first issue is how well you know the note names on your fretboard. The vast majority of theory that you learn is going to have you working with note names, especially if you're looking at scales, keys, chords, and of course, the notes themselves. If you don't know the note names on the fretboard well enough, then you're going to have a very difficult time trying to connect what you've learned in theory to the fretboard. You may understand the information, but taking that next step into applying the idea is always going to be a struggle. So the solution to not knowing the note names well enough is to actively work on learning and memorizing the notes on your fretboard. And this is as simple as practicing your note names for 3 to 5 minutes a day until you have them memorized. Now, if you aren't exactly sure how to memorize the notes on your fretboard, or you're looking for a streamlined approach to doing it, I recommend that you check out a program that I've built called Finally Learn the Notes of Your Guitar. You'll find a link to this particular program in the description below this video. The second issue is that you don't understand standard musical notation well enough.
I mean, look, there's just loads of notes, and there's none of those little pictures that show you where to put your fingers.
It seems like the vast majority of lessons and concepts for music theory are taught using standard notation. And unfortunately, standard notation is not something that is the easiest to get used to on the guitar. Chances are, as a guitarist, you've spent more time working with tablature and chord diagrams than you have with musical notation. So when you have to work with musical notation to learn theory, you've immediately got resistance that you have to overcome. So there's actually 2 solutions that you can take to this particular issue. The first is to become more comfortable with standard notation. Now that, of course, is easier said than done, so it's not always the best approach to take. But I do recommend that you have a basic understanding of standard notation. The second option is to take the concepts that you're learning for music theory and to do them in a more generalized form. Instead of learning music theory with standard notation, what you'll do is you'll focus on the pure information form. So you wouldn't necessarily write out, say, an interval of a G to a B on the treble clef staff, but what you would do is just work with the names.
Oh, I get it!
Although this may not be the ideal solution for this particular challenge, it does work and gets you comfortable with the information to a point where you can start to apply it. The third reason why you likely struggle with music theory on the guitar is that you really only learn a concept once and expect to have it down perfectly. It's rare when learning something new that you're going to get it the very first time you do it. So why would that be any different when it comes to music theory? The reality with music theory that you need to accept is that you're going to have to go over the concepts multiple times before it really starts to sink in. So the solution in this case that I recommend is that you review the material that you're learning or that you've learned in the past on a regular basis. I myself actually have different textbooks or articles that I'll leave in different places in my home that I'll read through from time to time. Another option that you can use, which is really effective, is to take the things that you're working on and teach them to a friend or a family member or somebody else that's just willing to listen.
It's okay. Plays me the harmonic minor scales in the key of D.
Ah, like this.
The fourth reason why you might be struggling with music theory is that you don't have the fundamentals down well enough. Now, this particular issue really applies when you are working on more advanced concepts in theory. An analogy for this would be to try to learn calculus without learning basic multiplication. Could you learn to do it? Maybe, but it would be really, really difficult to do. Some of the basics might include things like note names, rhythmic information, things like time signatures, possibly key signatures depending on what you're working on, and basic spellings of things like intervals and triads. So the solution I recommend for this is to review the basics on a regular basis. This could be on a daily basis or maybe once a week. And as with the previous challenge, try teaching the basic concepts to other people. Once again, by teaching ideas to somebody else, you'll reinforce them for yourself.
It's all right. I'm a teacher.
The fifth reason why you might struggle with music theory is that you don't train the concepts that you learn. Well, what does this mean exactly, to train the concepts? Think of it this way. If you were learning a new technique on the guitar, say some kind of picking motion, you wouldn't just learn what it is and expect to have it mastered. You have to take the motions that are required and train them and work them and practice them over and over and over again until they become second nature. You can actually do the same thing when it comes to music theory. The key difference with theory is that the training is more of a mental exercise than it is a physical exercise, which for a lot of people is a really boring thing or a really frustrating thing to have to do.
Oh! Ooh, my head's gonna be sore in the morning. Oh!
So the solution is that I recommend incorporating training into your practice and learning of music theory. So an example of using training with music theory might be using a metronome to help you recite the cycle of fifths. You could set the metronome to 80 beats per minute and say the next note in the cycle on every click.
2, 3, 4, C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, E, A, D, G, C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat.
As with training technique, once this becomes easier, you try to go a little bit faster, until eventually you're flying through it without really having to think about it at all. The sixth reason why you might be struggling with music theory is that you haven't connected new ideas you're learning to music that's relevant to you. New ideas in theory will be just ideas unless you're able to take it into the real world, unless you're able to apply it to real music. Another part of this is that it will be easier to remember newer ideas if you connect it to something that you like. You're creating an association between the idea and a piece of music, which makes it that much easier to remember. So the solution I recommend for this issue is that you be actively looking for examples of new ideas that you're learning in theory in music that you're listening for. Now, this isn't always the easiest thing to do for two reasons. One, you have to actually find these examples within music. And the second is that not every song is going to contain every piece of music theory that's possible to learn. Now, the more basic the concept that you're working with, the more likely you're going to find this within a piece of music. So if you're working on note names, you're absolutely going to find this in just about every song. But if you were working on, say, secondary dominant chords, you may not find that within the latest pop tune. The seventh reason why you may be struggling with music theory on your guitar is that you haven't taken new ideas and applied them in a creative way.
I've created life.
As with actually identifying an idea within a piece of music, taking something that's new and building something, a new musical idea, will give you a much better sense of how that concept works in a piece of music. Creating something of your own by using a new idea, you solidify not only your understanding of the concept, but you start to really get a sense for the effect that this particular idea has when you use it in music. So very simply, the solution is to take new ideas that you're working on from theory and create things. It might be a new riff, a new lick,
Come on, ladies, play us a tasty lick!
some kind of chord progression, or it could even be an entire song that you write built around the idea. The eighth reason why you may be struggling with music theory on your guitar is that you aren't taking new theory concepts and trying to connect them with the music that you're learning to play. This is similar to the sixth issue, but slightly different in that you're actually actively learning a piece of music as opposed to just listening to it. An example of this would be to say, take a song that you're working on and analyze the chord progression that's being played. You might be working to try to understand what key the song is in, or maybe even trying to break down what modes are contained within the piece. Another example might be to take a solo or an interesting lick and to break down the different intervals and notes that are being used to play it. So the solution to this issue is to take some time and to try to understand music that you're working on a little bit better.
That sounds hard.
Yes, this takes some time and it takes some thought, but after a while, you'll find that seeing the connections and understanding the things that you play will become so much easier to do. So I hope this gives you a little bit of insight into why you may have struggled to learn music theory on your guitar in the past, and given you some ideas on how to change that moving forward. If you have any thoughts or questions about what I presented in this video, you can of course post them in the comments below. If you want to see more videos like this about learning to play the guitar and about music, then please subscribe to my channel and watch for future updates. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.